Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our round 4 live stream for the Valspar Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your lineups tomorrow with a look at the weather report, any of your questions down there in the chat. We'll go through some shots gained metrics, some guys that are maybe popping heading into Sunday's action, as well as some contest selection, a little bit of lineup construction out there as well to go ahead and tie it all together. But hopefully you're having a fantastic Saturday wherever you are. Hopefully the round 3 showdown slate also treated you guys nicely and you're ready to talk some golf over here for the final round. Today I was able to get out on the golf course myself, play a little bit of action over here in Florida, and I've got to say, humbled myself real quick. This game is a 4-letter word for a reason, real difficult, as I'm sure all of us know. And I was -1 through my first 5 holes, was feeling myself, and let's say that I walked off the golf course by the time I got to 17. So it was a tale of 2 halves for sure, and ready to get after it for all the action tomorrow. I see we got Steven already down there in the chat. First off, welcome on in. And yeah, some fun out here for round 4 showdown, and good evening to everyone out there. But started off with a look at the golf course from today, which played progressively harder as the day went on. In the morning, the first half of tee times played to about a -0.2 scoring average. In your afternoon, it was nearly 0.4 strokes over par. So in all, it was about a 0.55 shot difference out there between the morning and afternoon, which was pretty much exactly what we expected. We thought that the course would maybe get firmer as the day went on, and your sustained winds also got a little bit more significant out there in the PM. And this is the observed weather over here from Palm Harbor. You'll see that in the morning, those sustained winds were closer to 2, maybe 5-6 miles an hour out there till about noon. Whereas in the afternoon, it got closer to 7 to 9 miles an hour the entire time. So that was the cause for a lot of that difference. And taking a look at the forecast over here for tomorrow, it looks pretty much the exact same. Pretty cool for the first hour, maybe 2 hours of play, but it heats up by about 9-10 a.m. local, but the wind gusts kicking up around 3-4 p.m. So maybe a little bit later than what you had for today, but this about 0.5 shot difference between the first and second half is probably going to be about the same for tomorrow. Now, the difference is that the form players, the guys that are playing the best golf this week, are going to be your last tee times out there for tomorrow. It was the case today, of course, but now it's after 3 rounds as opposed to just after 2. Maybe that makes the difference a little bit smaller than what you had from before, just because, right, all your best guys are up there towards the top, but conditions should be favoring that first half of tee time. So though it is a Sunday showdown slate, and we're going to have to find some guys to go out there and get placement points on, if you're trying to find some leverage or even just some average owned guys, like this middle tier range, right? Guys going off for about 10, maybe 11 a.m. local, or even a little bit before that, right? If you want to try and find some lower owned players, could definitely be an option out there for tomorrow. We don't have the tee times quite yet. In fact, let me actually bring up the PGA Tour site to see if maybe they posted them over the last few minutes. But just like you had out there for round number 3, we're going to assume that it's 2 sums off of hole number 1. Now, they could change it up just because of the fact that it's Sunday, but let's go ahead and just confirm that right now. So yeah, just like you had out there for round number 3, it's going to be 2 sums off of hole number 1. So no real change. First tee time is there at 7:30 local, and your last should be right about 2 p.m. And yeah, that's exactly what we ended up getting there. So no changes out there from the tee time perspective. Before we talk about some contest selection and putting together lineups, do want to go through some of these shots gained metrics, which if you want to take a look at the event as a whole, usually a really good idea out there towards the top end of the board, right? Because we've got to get some placement points out there into lineups. I really like looking at the whole 54-hole sample size. I'm out here towards the top end of the board. So we're going to come back to this here in a few minutes. But before we take a look at the event as a whole, I do want to deep dive what we saw for round 3. So if we go over here, just like we do for rounds 2 and 3 showdown, I like to look at some of the ball strikers. So let's go right to that category and get things kicked off. You can see Bud Cauley was your best ball striker of anyone in the field. Billy Horschel there at number 2, who, by the way, he made a double at his first hole and then rebounded after that to go out there and have a pretty solid day. Guys like Jordan Spieth really hit his irons well. Same thing with Justin Thomas. Those, of course, those two playing together. But guys like Matt McCarty, Nearguard, Peterson down there also had a pretty good day with his irons. You can see this whole top end of the list here, right? These are all players that I'm going to give a slight bump to. Now, some of them are your chalk towards the top, like a Victor Hovland, for example. A Justin Thomas will probably be close to 30% owned. Shane Lowry, I've got well over 25%. And then even a value play like a Ricky Castillo, right, starting up there in the top 5, it's going to be at least like 15, maybe 20% owned over there in GPP. So, there's a lot of chalk up here towards the top end of this list. But as I was mentioning over here with the weather split, you're going to have to find some leverage, right? Even if you're taking those guys with the placement points, getting a mid to early starter out there in a lineup is going to be how you win and lose at GPP, right? You're going to have a lot of people that play Justin Thomas tomorrow, a lot of people that go out there and play guys like Victor Hovland. If they shoot -3 and win the event, you're not winning and losing the big $5 or $25 GPP because you played Victor Hovland or Justin Thomas, right? Like, a third of the field, right, is going to have those sort of players. It's more so the guys like Erasmus Niergaard Peterson that you might want to look out to as a pivot, right? He still really struggled over there with the short game. It was pretty much the same thing out there in round number 2. Maybe he can go out there and even just be a neutral out there in the short game and go out there and improve on his performance. So, a guy starting at T40 isn't going to be carrying nearly as much ownership as some of the other guys around him. Like a Ryan Gerard at T31, like you're not getting a bunch of placement points with this sort of player, but really setting up well, the kind of guy that you'd expect to maybe go out there and improve out there round 4, and he's not going to be carrying nearly as much ownership. So you can say that about a Thorbjorn Olesen. You can see he gained in the 2 ball striking categories, but is sitting there at T49. And then even these like T24s, like a Sam Ryder, a Kaito Onishi, right? Guys down there in that lower 7K range, maybe 6K range out there within Onishi. These sort of players, you're looking at sub 5% ownership on. So, up top, you can still use the shots gain metrics to go out there and make your conviction plays. But just like rounds 2 and 3 showdown, it's not so much the pure chalk that I use these for. It's more so some of those lower owned players. You can look at a regular approach play as well. So not just that ball striking. A lot of the same guys are showing up here, but maybe a Norlander wasn't towards the top end of the list and now is. And Mackenzie Hughes, same thing, right? He lost off the tee. So a guy there at T40 that you could maybe use because of his approach popping. But yeah, whether it's ball striking, whether it's the approach stats that we're going through here, all different ways that you can find those sleepers. Another one here, by the way, Rafael Campos, who lost over 2.5 strokes off the tee. Sure, not ideal in that category, but he is at least gaining over there with the irons. We also like to look at the short game, try and find the guys that were maybe getting a little bit lucky. So like a Joe Highsmith, I used him in a lot of lineups today, ended up paying off in most cases. But with him gaining over 3 strokes with the putter, I'm not going to count on that happening 2 days in a row. A Justin Thomas, for example, right? He gained over 3 strokes with the putter. A Pavon, a Willett, a Chandler, even a Tommy Fleetwood who gained over 2 strokes with the putter. And by the way, gained over there with the around the green play, aren't the sort of guys that set up the best statistically. Now, and if they're a piece of chalk like a Tommy Fleetwood, maybe a Justin Thomas, who we think is going to be at around 30% owned, these could be prime fade candidates. And I've got to say, I was really high on a JT and a Tommy Fleetwood this week. Both of them made my main slate exposure, but based on how they played out here in round number 3, I've got to say, they're not really trending in the right direction heading into Sunday. So I'm going to have to think real hard about trying to go out there and use them in lineups. Other guys like Echeverria, Fishburne also got lucky with the putter. Same thing with guys like an Andrew Novak, which you've got to have this kind of spike round, right, to go out there and make an optimal lineup. But it's very rare that you do that 2 days in a row. So these around the green poppers, also, you got to kind of hold it against them as well. So guys like a Goodwin, Davis Riley, once again, he's gone lucky like 3 days in a row out there with the short game, or at least 2 of the 3 rounds to this point. Has gotten very lucky out there in the short game categories. But these guys, just like the guys that were gaining 2-3 strokes putting, anyone that gained over a stroke here around the green, you've got to kind of hold it against them a bit, right? It's not like you completely downgrade them or anything like that, but unless their ball striking was up to par as well, it's really not as impressive as what you have with some of these other players. You can also look at the negatives, right? Guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes, and especially if they were guys that their ball striking was there, they're the kind of guys I'm looking for a bounce back on. So Niergaard over here, Peterson, he's actually had this happen 2 days in a row. So stat-wise, right, he's really due for some regression in the short game categories. But you can see over here, right, he's positive over there in the approach play and off the tee. A lot of these other guys, though, right, were just negative across the board. So those sort of players, I don't know if I'm really looking to for a bounce back, but like a Victor Perez, he at least gained off the tee, and then sure, his irons weren't his best stuff, but he's going to bounce back a little bit with the short game, you would think. Other guys here like Sam Stevens, right? He did not have a very good iron day, but you'd expect him to bounce back a little bit with the short game, are low-owned players that you could try and use for some leverage. Like Sam Stevens at T61, right? He'll have a relatively early tee time. Victor Perez, after his struggles out there on moving day, right? He went from in contention. In fact, I think he was towards the lead at one point today. And then now he's down there at T31. He's going to have a better tee time. He's going to be a lot lower owns now over there in GPPs. In stat-wise, sets up for a little bit of a bounce back on there at Sunday. So that's what I'm looking for over there in the round 3 stats. If we zoom out a little bit, we just take a look at the top end of the leaderboard. This is where I like to take a look at the entire event. So if I'm going to go out there and play guys at like 25 to 30% ownership, I want them to be the best ball strikers in the field. And if we just take a look at the top end of the leaderboard here, guys like Victor Hovland would be towards the top end of the ball striking list. Shane Lowry, Justin Thomas over the first 3 rounds has had a lot of success in that category. Kevin Yu, Hisatuni, also Jeremy Paul, all these guys gaining over 5 strokes are the players that I'm going to be flocking to in lineups. These guys like a Bridgman that's actually lost with the ball striking stats, guys like even Castillo or Nico Echeverria that have been kind of okay out there in those 2 categories are guys that I'm probably going to be avoiding. If I'm going to have to use somebody in 40, maybe 50% of lineups to get that leverage, I don't want them to be somebody that's luck sacking it with 9 shots gained putting. And I will say, I bet Bridgman outright this week. So I kind of hope he proves me wrong a little bit over there from the outright perspective. But stat wise, right, he sets up pretty terribly heading into Sunday. So, if we're looking at the stats, guys like Hovland would really make a lot of sense. Also, a Lowry, a Kevin Yu. JT kind of had the stats go the other direction today. So maybe that's a little bit of a red flag. But your Hovlands, your Lowrys, your Yus, all of those sort of players are the guys that I will likely be well over the field on. And what you also notice about those sort of players is they're the more established guys that you have towards the top end of the board, right? Especially a Hovland, a Shane Lowry, right? Guys that have multiple tour wins to their name, are used to being out there in contention. Maybe not so much over there with the Kevin Yu, but I'd rather have these ball striking first players than the guys that with the short game are maybe getting a little bit lucky. So that's how I handle the shots gained metrics, right? This is just one data point to go out there and use to your advantage, right? Just like the weather's a data point, right? Trying to take some mid to early starters, right? I don't think that's a bad thing to have in your back pocket. You've got round 4 historical that you can find over there on the stone. You've got the approach series, the putting series that you could use to your advantage. All of these different things that if you incorporate them into building your player pool, you can go out there and find some success. So I'll see if there's any player deep dives that you guys want down there in chat, which by the way, if there's anyone you want me to go through the stats on, just feel free to go ahead and let me know, and I'll go ahead and do so for you. Afterwards, we're going to go through some contest selection. So we'll take a look at what we have over there in DraftKings for tomorrow. And then we're going to put a lineup together as well to give you a little bit of a look into the perspective that I'm thinking about. So we got prep there. Says anyone going back to Adam Scott? He'll for sure be low owned. So if you're looking for a pure pivot play, then he could be that in large field GPPs. If you're in anything else, though, it would maybe be a little bit silly, I'd say, to get to that sort of player. Cheers to Sunday. Got my Red Bull right here, Michael. So cheers to that. You hope that Adam Scott's daughter gets accepted to Yale. So yeah, this is a similar comment to what you had yesterday, which I got to say, you've got some funny comments, yo. So cheers to you on that one. And I'm not going to read the entire one there, but I love that. You obviously hope that Adam Scott is dealing with a little bit of an issue, and I couldn't blame you. First like in the house. You heard him, by the way. If you haven't already smashed the like button, what are you guys waiting for? Yeah, we saw the tee times there. I appreciate you, though, Brian. I'll look for JT to shoot 73 now that he's put himself into contention. Yeah, well, he's got the Rory syndrome, right? Out of contention, he goes off. In contention, not so much. We'll see if that trend continues tomorrow. Who knows? And then we got Joseph down there as well. So it doesn't look like we have any player deep dives to do, which is cool with me, right? I've already done a lot of those, but we could circle back to this if you guys have any to go through. Let's go through some contest selection, which honestly, this time of year is kind of a little bit of a letdown because it looks just like you had for rounds 2 and 3. The 555 is a little bit bigger than what you had for the last few days. I believe it was a 100K contest out there for rounds 2 and 3. Now it's at least 120K. It's a little bit less top heavy as well as what you had with those other contests, but still not really my sort of thing unless I'm really trying to add some exposure for a slate. The big $20 GPP is a third out there to first. So a pretty nice payout out there for first place. But outside of that, not really the kind of contest that you want to be entering. It is a 10th over there to second place, which is especially when you look at first and second place together, right? It's nearly half the prize pool that's going out there to first and second. If you add first and second plus the rake, it's actually over half the prize pool that you have going to those three things. You've got the four max $250, so $1,000 to go out there and max enter. This one is 20% to first, which is kind of spun line with what we've had all week. Really no differences when it comes to this, except for maybe this contest is a little bit better than what we've had for the last few days. Yesterday, I believe it was a 7th over there to first place. So it was a 5K to first, just like it is for tomorrow, but it was a 35K prize pool. So now it's 40K out there total. So just a little bit of a lower proportion out there to first place, which does help out with the payout structure. So I've got to say, if you're looking to enter a GPP, like especially like one of the big lottery sort of contests, this is by far, and it's not even close at this point, by far the best contest that you can enter, just because your payouts that are in the top 10 actually mean something. And you don't have to finish in first to go out there and have decent ROI. They still have this 12 max $44 out there, which it's kind of top heavy like that 555. It's really not my favorite contest. More so looking at those $100 single entries, there's $33, there's $12, right, that we always point out here on these live streams. There's some of the better contests that you can enter. But what I'm looking for right now is to see if they have that $10 18 max, but it doesn't look like they have that posted for round 4, which, you know, isn't different, right? That's been the case for pretty much the last few weeks at this point. Disappointing, but I'm not surprised over there from DraftKings. In terms of putting lineups together, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated when it comes to Sunday Showdown. This is where we've got to go out there and start to incorporate our placement points. So if you've been here for a while, you guys know what I like to do for Sundays. I like to knock my placement points out right off the bat and then go out there and try and find my leverage afterwards. So let's go ahead, sort this by score, take a look at the top end of the board. And I'm going to go ahead and just throw in 2, maybe even 3 guys here towards the top to go ahead and lock in my top 5 players. So in terms of my winner, I'm going to throw in a Victor Hovland. I just think it's time for him to go out there and get the job done. And at $8,200, he is just far too cheap, in my opinion, for the kind of upside that he brings. I'm going to throw in Shane Lowry, which is kind of a main slate hedge. I don't have a bunch of them over there in my main slate lineups. I played them this week, but just not a ton over there in my lineups. So I'm going to throw him in there at $9,700. Of my top lineups, he's in like none of the top ones that I have. So that's also part of the reason I'm going to throw him into this kind of build. And then the other one we're going to go with, let's go a little bit further down. So let's go down here to like the T17s out here for our last guy with placement points, because we still need these guys to shoot at least -3 tomorrow, right? Just because you might finish top 5, right? That's not enough to go out there and make the optimal lineup. We need guys that are shooting -3 and finishing in that top 5, which means if you want to go down here to these T17s or even these T24s, you can do so for some of your placement points. So for the sake of this, I'm going to throw in a JT Poston, because just like Hovland's Lowry, he's been trending in the right direction for quite some time. His iron play has been on point the last few months. The issue for Poston, which is very surprising actually, it's been the putter, right? He has not gotten anything to drop over the last few months. In fact, I believe he's lost strokes putting in all but one event all over here in 2025. So now that he's starting to finally see some of those putts go in, I really like these 3 as a core up top. So we've got 3 players here that can finish top 5 if they go out there and shoot a decent score. We still have about 7,800, maybe 7,700 remaining for our last 3 spots. And those last 3 are going to be where we're going to have to get our leverage. So we've got some chalk up here, maybe a 30% of Hovland, close to that over there with Lowry. Poston won't be as chalky. He'll probably be closer to 15%, maybe just a hair below that, I'd say, over there in GPPs tomorrow. Our last 3 positions are where all the leverage is going to be coming from. So I'm going to throw a Luke Clanton in there at $8,100. Just somebody I think is more talented than the price tag and is going to be low owned, starting there at T40. Remembering the shots gained metrics from before, right? Guys like a Ryan Gerard were really standing out. He was solid with the ball striking out there today, but really wasn't getting a whole lot of putts to drop. So you've got a Clanton who should probably be like sub 10%. He might be close to 10%, I'd say, over there in some contest. A Ryan Gerard, he's going to be maybe 5% owned, but for sure under that 7% ownership mark. As long as our last man in here isn't an Echeverria at -7 or Kevin Yu there at -5, I can almost guarantee you that this lineup would have enough leverage. But if we went to another chalky piece, like let's say a Yu or Nico, as I pointed out there, at maybe 15, 20%, well, that's where you start to get into some trouble. If you're entering against 10,000 other entries like you have in that big $5, then you're going to have issues getting enough leverage. So what I recommend, especially in those large field GPPs, is you just don't play 4 pieces of chalk in a lineup, right? 3 is probably where you want to go out there and cap it off out there in those big lotteries. If this was a single entry, you could probably still play a Kevin Yu or an Echeverria here, and you could probably get away with it out there against just a couple hundred other entries. But the larger the contest, right, the more lottery the contest that you're playing in, the more that you have to incorporate this ownership angle. So the last minute, even like the last 2, maybe 3 players that you're getting to in any sort of lineup is really going to come down to the contest that you're entering. But if this was in cash, right, we'd pretty much be ignoring the ownership aspect. It just peppering guys towards the top end of the board. But that's pretty much all I've got over here for the Showdown stream, guys. Go ahead and smash that like button for the Ship It Nation crew if you guys haven't already. And also subscribe so you guys don't miss any of the content throughout the rest of the year. Of course, I think we've got Houston on the schedule next week, which we'll have Showdown 4 out there for rounds 2 through 4. But for the prop and betting side of things over here for Sunday slate, make sure to check out my YouTube channel as well. Over there on LukeDFS, which you can find over here on YouTube or over there on Twitter/X. I'll be going through all the prop boards over here in an hour or so, pin locations, stat averages out there from round number 3. So if you're somebody that bets on matchups, any of like the strokes and birdie props that you have on all these other sites, that's what that live stream is going to be for. So of course, over here on the Ship It Nation side, right, DFS site, we try and keep it over there for the fantasy side of things. And then afterwards, that's why we go live over there on my channel as well. As a lot of you guys probably know, I go through both sides of things over there with the content that I do. So make sure to check that out if that's something that is up your guys' alley. I'll see if there's any last second questions, but if not, we're going to hop on out of here. So where we leave off, it does look like we have a few questions. So we're going to have to get to those, which is totally fine. So let's see, looking for some round 4 magic. Cheers to that, my man. I need some round 4 magic. It's been an okay week so far, but it could be going a little bit better, right? I'm looking for that spike round, I guess, is what we're looking for. What's going on, Jamari? I appreciate you always stopping by the live streams. Thank you so much for showing that support. Do I think that Kevin Yu is going to be chalky? Probably. So that -5, I'd imagine at least 10% ownership. I think if not closer to 15% out there in some contests. So unfortunately, yeah, going to have some of that. So let's look at some Shipley or some Poston stats. Why not? So let's start with Poston first, and then we'll go to Neil Shipley after. So Poston is -3. So somebody that is in consideration out there for the placement points. It's been a little bit of the putting this week, which a lot of times we'd go, that's a huge red flag, that sort of thing. But not so much with Poston, because I know we already kind of talked about it a bit, but you take a look at his recent starts out here on tour, the putter has been the problem out there for JT Poston. So this kind of week where he's going out there and carrying himself in those 2 categories is, I think, a welcome sight, because you can see over here, right? Approach play has been into the positive for 6 straight events. Last week, he finally got the putter to start working over there at the Players, and it's continued out there into this kind of event. So I would say the stat profile, at least over the first 3 rounds, is sub-ideal if you're a ball striking truther, but you kind of got to think about Poston as a player, right? Kind of deal with him as an individual case just because of what he's done recently with the shots gained. And then he wanted to look at Shipley as well, so let's do that. So good old Neil Shipley gained off the tee today. Irons could have been a little bit better, but overall this week, he's been fantastic with the ball striking, gaining close to 3 strokes off the tee, a little bit over a stroke over the 3 rounds on approach. A great stat profile. I mean, unlike what you had with Poston, right? He's getting it done with how he's actually hitting the golf ball, and is due for some regression over there with the putter. So if you're looking for a low-owned diamond in the rough, I think Neil Shipley is somebody that you could easily look to. Spieth or Hovland. So, that kind of question comes down to what you're looking for out there in a player, because Hovland has the clear incentive of maybe having the winner or even placement points up there towards the top end of the board. It's not like Spieth can't get placement points, but he's not in that same premium position as what you have with the Hovland. So if you need to get different, if you're looking to, you have some chalk maybe at other spots in your lineup, or maybe someone else that you think is going to win the thing, they go with the Jordan Spieth. But if you don't have that winner already, you don't have those placement points starting in the top 3, top 5, then maybe you do play a Victor Hovland. So that one to me kind of comes down to who else you're playing. You just wanted to let everyone know that Glover's winning. Okay. You told everyone first. We'll remember that. Best of luck out there, Yob. Hopefully I said your name right. Let me know if I didn't, by the way. Xander has to be a bounce back. It's classic backdoor Sunday. I would say so, Alan. Days 1 and 2, his ball striking was solid. Today, off the tee was horrendous. So I would have to think that he has a better Sunday. Even if it's not a great Sunday, Alan, I think it's going to be better than what you had today. You're in first for the main slate on UK. A little bit of a sweat for tomorrow. Well, best of luck out there, Brian. I know that I forget the name of the site that you're playing on, but I hope you go out there and take it down. Might be too early to say that Hovland looks like he may have found something. Yeah, it might be too early to say, but he does so far this week, fingers crossed, look like he found something. And I guess I'll mention what I mentioned this week. On Monday, I believe I tweeted out saying that I think that these weak field events could be exactly what Viktor Hovland needs. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I mean this as literally as humanly possible. This is the first regular PGA Tour event that Viktor Hovland has played since May 2023. And by regular PGA Tour event, I don't mean like lower level weak field event. I mean non-major, non-signature event. He has not played on just your regular run-of-the-mill PGA Tour event in almost 2 years. And what that does, and I don't think a lot of people think about this when they think about shots gained and how players are playing, is he's only playing against the top 50 in the world, right? When you're only playing against the world's best, it's hard to look like a world-class player. It's hard to look like somebody that's gaining 2 strokes per round, right? Because you're not playing against Kevin Kisner. And I hate to pick on Kiz because I love the guy to death. I actually met someone today that used to caddy for Kisner when he was not in pro events, for pro-ams, that sort of thing. It told me some stories out there about Kiz on the course today. But it's true, right? Gaining strokes in a field like this is infinitely easier than what you have in those signature events. So I don't even know if he found anything, man. I think it's level of competition. I think you just throw Hovland in a bunch of these weak field events, and he's going to top 10 almost every single time. So we'll see. I think somebody has told him that. I mean, I tweeted it out. I can't be the only person that's noticed that, right? That said, like, what are you doing only playing in these sort of events? Because you throw him an event that's fair for his talent level, and I think you're going to see the old Viktor come back. So we'll see. If he does it tomorrow, who knows? Maybe that is the elixir of life for him. It's not the same Xander right now. I agree with that. But days 1 and 2, he looked pretty good, so we'll have to see. Would I consider that start with Lowry, Young, and Poston in a single entry? For sure, I'd consider it, Deacon, especially because in a single entry, the ownership isn't as much of an issue. Just with those last 3 spots, you've got to have some leverage in there. So, make sure that you're not adding like a 5th player on there that's super chalky, right? Maybe one more you can get away with out there in that single entry, but definitely look for at least 1 or 2 guys there to go out there and get some leverage and chip in like a slapdick. Yeah, I didn't get to see the round today, Brian, because it was out there on the golf course, but stat-wise, yeah, that's what it looks like. McGreevy looks good there. Okay, let's look at the stats. Why not? I didn't get to see any of his round today, but stat-wise, gaining off the tee. By the way, his stats recently have just been on fire. He's been ball striking the shit out of it. Could have been better on approach today. I guess if we're being nitpicky, that's the one bad thing that we've seen there. But yeah, putter has got to get better than what you had for round 3. So maybe a good short game regression candidate. No like option available for you. Google is not good. Damn, maybe refresh the page. You'll be able to find it, Ken. But hey, if you literally can't find the like button, I guess we'll exempt you out there from clicking it. But all of you other jabronis out there, you have no exemption. Go out there, smash the like button. And did I see Jeremy Paul? I saw that he's up there towards the top. He's playing pretty decent golf, but no, I didn't see any of his round. Like I said, I was out there on the golf course. He's T5, so he's at least playing decent golf, but he's got to go a long way to go out there and win. Good start there, right? -3 through 6 holes, but a little bit of a train wreck coming down the stretch. So we'll see how it goes for him. But alrighty, guys, got to go ahead and cut off the live stream there. Best of luck over there with all of your Sunday exposure. For the prop and betting side of things, like I said, stop by my live stream a little bit later on tonight. And I hope to see your names towards the top of some of those GPPs. Best of luck out there with all of that. Maybe any outright betting sweats that you have going on as well. And let's have ourselves a Sunday.